In every family, there are stories that we pass down. Some of them are true. Some of them are polished until they shine. And some stories are so broken, you can barely tell where the facts end and the fiction begins. My name is Erv Lenzy, and this is the story that I grew up hearing about my great-grandfather, Charlie Henderson. He was a gambler, a drifter, a man who disappeared after a poker game and who might have faked his own death just to escape the life he left behind. For years, I believed the story exactly the way it was told to me when I was a kid, until I started pulling on some of those loose threads in our family history, and the deeper I pulled, the stranger the story became. This is Finding Grandpa Charlie, a true crime-style family mystery about what we remember, but also the things we forget. So, my grandma always told us stories when I was little on into my teenage years before she died. She always told stories about a man who disappeared like smoke, my great-grandpa Charlie. And Grandpa Charlie, as I began calling him, was part myth, part cautionary tale. She said that he was a gambler, the kind who carried bags of money and trouble in equal measure. He was always looking over his shoulder as if someone was after him. And one day, he just didn't come back. The story changes with each telling. Some say all that money went up in flames. Others said that he tangled with a train. Charlie was long gone by the time I was a kid, but as a kid, I didn't ask questions. You see, he was the ghost in our family tree, the one that nobody could bury, but the one story, the one person that nobody could find. But in this first episode, in this podcast, I want to tell you the story that I grew up hearing. The one that came out after Thanksgiving dinners or at grandma's house on a weekend visit over beans and cornbread. The kind of story that makes kids lean in and listen and makes adults go quiet. The kind that settles into the walls of a family and stays there for generations. Nobody ever said much about Grandpa Charlie, not really, but what we had were just fragments handed down like mismatched buttons in a jar. Some said he died, others said he ran, but everyone seemed to agree on one thing. He never came back. He was a gambler, the kind who could disappear for weeks or months, only to show up again like a stray dog looking for warmth. He'd sleep it off, clean up, maybe stay a few days or months, and then be gone again. Always chasing something. Always looking over his shoulder. When he vanished for good, people just shrugged. Maybe he finally won big. Maybe he finally lost big. As a kid, I thought he sounded like an outlaw, like some Old West bandit who swapped his horse for a deck of cards. He was like the Darth Vader of our family lore, a kind of, a villain, but a kind of legend. The kind of story you shouldn't admire, but sort of do. And then there was the train. Grandpa Charlie was gone a lot. He would come back just long enough to get his wife pregnant and then vanish again, probably gambling his way the next town over or farther. But when he did come back, it was with bags of money, and Grandma Henrietta, she wanted nothing to do with it. The story she told my grandmother shortly after my grandparents were married was that she would take those bags of money that Charlie brought home and throw them straight into the fireplace. She called it filthy lucre. There's a story that Grandma used to tell, and in the 90s, I sat down several times with Grandma and recorded audio interviews with her. I want to present a clip of that now where she tells a rather interesting story about Charlie and his gambling partner. Now, Granny can be a little difficult to understand, so listen close, and this story is wild.
Started telling you about him killing that guy.
Uh-huh.
The guy come to the house, to Miss Henderson's house.
Okay, so he came to Grandpa Charlie's house.
That the man's wife and kids was over there, and she had a baby laying on the bed.
Okay.
I don't know what their name was, but anyhow, that guy was his gambling partner. So she guess they fell out, and it looked like they were in town or something, because the person said he come home and didn't say anything. And he come home and come up, and Mr. Henderson stepped in the door, and when he did, well, this man shot, and Mr. Henderson just took his gun and shot him and killed him.
The guy stepped in the door?
No, the guy was over there on the porch.
Okay, the guy was on the porch.
And when Henderson stepped to the door, well, this guy shot at him. And just hitting him, he hit his own baby laying on the bed. He just fell down on the doorstep like that. She said he laid there till the next day for the police, for the sheriff and all come out there. And
one time, Charlie was gone too long. Now, this was in Central Texas. He had supposedly been working in logging camps and labor and working along the railroads, possibly for the railroad companies, possibly for logging companies. A lot of work that laborers did back then revolved around shipping a lot of the goods and services like cotton or lumber that was common in East and Northeast Texas. Back then, the two were often tied together, logging and railroads. One day, word came back to Grandma Henrietta. That was her name. That was Charlie's wife, Henrietta. Some men who claimed to have worked with Charlie showed up and said he had died. It was mysterious. The interview with Grandma, where she talked about it, she said that they told Charlie's wife that he, quote, and this is a quote, fell under a train. That's the phrase Grandma used. It was her way with her old Kentucky accent. Like it was a phrase you could just drop into a conversation. Fell under a train. Maybe he was hit. Maybe it was a wreck. Grandma didn't seem to know when I asked her about it. But one thing she knew, it supposedly happened in or around Liberty, Texas. There was no body. The men said he was buried next to the tracks. His body was so cut up. There was no funeral, no paperwork. Frustrating to me as a genealogy researcher. The men told Grandma Henrietta that he was just buried in a random unmarked grave. Just another whispered ending to a man whose life was made of whispers. As I got older, the story stopped being just a story. It started to itch. And I did what came naturally. I scratched the itch. It started to feel like a loose thread in a very old sweater. And I did what any restless, over-curious, probably over-caffeinated young person would do. I started pulling on that thread. The tapestry of our family history. Yes, that's a Star Trek reference. If you know, then you know. I started with what I knew for sure. Charlie was in the 1900 and 1910 census living in North Texas. He was married to Henrietta. He had kids. He existed. He wasn't just myth and folklore. He was fact. My aunt, my father's sister, did some genealogy research in the early 80s and found him in the 1900 census. Then the 1910 census came out, I don't know, I want to say 83, and we found him again. He had moved. He was in a different county, but still in the northern section of Texas, along the Red River. But back then, you could only find someone by head of household. If you weren't the head of the household, your name was not in the index. So looking for Charlie, who was born in 1880, roughly, to look for him in the 1880 census was impossible without knowing who his father was. Well, not easy. It was before the age of computers and internet, and you had to roll through old microfilm looking for names. And it was a different time. But after this, nothing. We had nothing. There was no death certificate, no birth certificate, no marriage certificate, just silence about Charlie. Now, we knew where Grandma Henrietta died. We knew where she was buried. But that's a topic for a different podcast, perhaps. But for a long time, the family thought that was the end of it. Maybe he really did die. Maybe he was really gone. He did not show up again. When the 1920 census came out, he was missing. Grandma Henrietta had moved on. She had a different last name in 1920. And then sometime in the early 2000s, Family Search, the website owned by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, released fully indexed versions of the U.S. Census. The information age was upon me. Suddenly, you could search for anyone by name, not just the head of household. And that changed everything, my friends. I had never been able to find Charlie because I didn't know who his father was. But now, with a fully searchable census record, fully searchable census index, I could just plug in his name and hit search. It was one of those moments that only a family history researcher will truly understand. That wild spark of excitement over dusty old government data. See, we don't go to genealogy libraries much anymore. Everything is online, but if you ever got to experience a genealogy library, that darkened area where the microfilm readers were, it was a hallowed area. It was sacred. You could hear people writing with pencils on paper. You could hear the scrolling of the microfiche wheels, the reels spinning. And every now and then you would hear somebody exclaim loudly, "I found it! There it is!" This was my moment. Except I was in a computer lab at a community college in Galveston County where I grew up as a young adult and a teenager. Yeah, that wild spark of excitement. I remember waiting for the page to load, not expecting much, and then there he was. Infant Charlie. Just a baby. Listed alongside his father, Robert A. Listed as R.A. Henderson, and I didn't know it was Robert A. All I knew was R.A. Henderson. I sat there staring at the screen like I'd uncovered buried treasure. That was the first time Charlie stopped being a ghost. Next, I decided to look for Robert Alonzo, Charlie's father in the 1900 census. I wanted to see what the family looked like at the turn of the 20th century. And sure enough, I found him. There he was, living in the same North Texas county as Charlie in 1900. That record gave me a glimpse into that household. Names, ages, occupations. It felt like opening a window into a long forgotten room. Suddenly, these weren't just names anymore. They were people, a family. And right there on the same page, Charlie, my great-grandfather, the same man in the 1900 census by the same name, age 20, living with his parents in the same county, listed as a bachelor. No wife, no kids. The same week as my Charlie. Remember my Charlie? The one who is listed as married with children. So now the story has a twist, a double. A man who vanished and a man who may never have existed the way we thought he did, living a double life. The bachelor and the gambler. Bachelor Charlie living at home with his parents, and gambler Charlie, who owns a home, not a renter, but an owner, who owns a small farm with his wife, who lied about her age in the 1900 census and said that she was white when she told my grandmother that she was Native American and from Oklahoma. This story gets longer and more twisted with each telling. Next time on Finding Grandpa Charlie, we take a closer look at Fannin County, Texas, the land, the courthouse, the cotton economy, and the Henderson family who lived there. Who was Robert A? Who was Charlie? Who was his father? And who was his grandfather? What do we know about Charlie's first wife? What was life like for a young man living in that northern Texas border county right on the edge of Oklahoma, or Indian Territory as it was known in 1900? Standing on the edge of the 20th century with one foot in a farm field and the other in a poker game. Join me next time as we explore on Finding Grandpa Charlie. Thank you for listening to Finding Grandpa Charlie. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple, all of those. And hey, if you're feeling generous, leave a review or a rating. It really helps more people discover the story. I'm going to be posting photos, documents. I have some full interviews with Granny that are 25 to 40, 50 minutes long. I have several that I will be posting, family history pictures, stuff that I've found. I'm going to set up a website. Right now, it is just a generic website. I haven't published it yet, but I will be getting it. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm Erv Lenzy, and I'll see you next time.